We move now from the rutted roads of northern France to the towering heights of the Cathedral of Notre Dame. The year is 1429. You are an eyewitness to history. At least that's what you'll tell yourself later, standing in the shadow of Joan of Arc's statue. But right now, all you see is a young girl dressed as a man. In her early 20s, she stands facing the coronation ground, her head bent. She's waiting. Men in ornate robes bustle around her, whispering urgently. All eyes are on the large oak doors of the cathedral. They open and a roar rises from inside. Hundreds of voices chanting, St. Denis, Ora pro nobis. The crowd surges forward. You are swept along with them. Can't see much, but hear the soft clank of armor as men in chainmail push their way through the crowd. Then suddenly you see her. It's Joan of Arc. Her white banner held high, her blue and white gown rippling behind her like wings. She is carried aloft on a sea of humanity, swept toward the cathedral. The crowd parts. She kneels before the altar. Then, moments later, she is gone. Back at the palace, the king's counselors argue loudly. Is she a prophet, a heretic? Is a saint sent from God, or a witch sent by the devil? The king sits silently on his throne, lost in thought. Outside, people gather. Some are armed. They want the heretic burned. Others stand silently, watching the house where she sleeps. Soon, they will be marching with her, carrying her banner. You stand among them. As darkness falls, you watch a small figure approach. It's Joan. She's alone, without her armor, without her retinue. She walks slowly. The men part before her. She speaks to them, urging them onward. A low chant rises. You join in with the others, O God of our fathers. Turn again the captivity of France, and visit with your righteous anger the nation that is the punishment of Israel. Hope stirs within you. This fragile hope. Can the peasant girl really drive out the English? You don't know? But something inside you compels you to keep following her deeper into the forest. Here, away from prying eyes, the trees seem to close in around you. Sunlight filters down through the leaves. The ground is soft. The air smells of pine and wet earth. Around you, men in chainmail practice swordplay. The rhythmic clang of steel echoes in the woods. It's not the only sound. Nearby, a cook stirs a pot over a small fire. His face is grimed with soot, his sleeves torn. In the distance, someone sings. The tune is sad. Everything seems so still, so peaceful. For a moment, the war feels far away. Later, you will remember this moment. You huddle around a dying fire with the others. Rain hammers the ground. The wind whips around you. Fire sputters, and you pull your cloak tighter. Someone strums a lute. The notes are faint, barely audible above the wind. Like Meacha Marsh, he sings. Like Meacha Marsh. The song is about a knight and a serving girl who meet one night. Their encounter is brief, almost accidental, yet loaded with longing. You listen to the song and think about the road ahead. What lies beyond the next bend? Will the rain ever stop? Will the fighting ever end? You do not know. All you know is that somewhere in the distance, there is a faint glow, a campfire. And tomorrow, you will follow it, walking deeper into the unknown. The camera pans out. The camp followers disappear into the darkness. Only the fire remains, flickering in the still air. Above, a single star shines in the vast canopy of night. Joan of Arc didn't just ignite the flames of war. She also created new weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to answer the extraordinary question, what weapons were used by Joan of Arc? As always, if you want to learn more about the medieval world, don't forget to subscribe. Joan of Arc was a French peasant girl who lived between 1412 and 1431. He listened to her prophecies, and he decided to take a chance on her. Charles allowed her to accompany his army into battle. Despite her lack of military knowledge, unshakable belief in her mission convinced many that she was indeed chosen by God. This, however, did not make her any better equipped for battle. Swords were the weapon of choice back then, and almost every knight would carry one. But despite the fact that this would have been the easiest weapon for Joan to use, it probably wasn't the best choice. To this day, we are unsure if he believed in her abilities, or if he simply thought that he had nothing to lose. The tale goes that she walked up to the gate of the city and demanded that it be opened. This may seem like an odd choice considering that she was mainly involved in close combat, but bows and arrows could be useful for taking out enemy archers and other ranged combatants. While Joan of Arc may have been given access to weapons, she was not allowed to actually use them. According to the accounts of her contemporaries, Joan never killed anyone in battle. The historical record is incomplete, and much of what we know about her comes from sources that are often biased or unreliable. Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching. However, we can make an educated guess based on what we know about medieval warfare and Joan's personal characteristics. Based on this evidence, it's likely that Joan was given a sword, lance, or axe, as these were the weapons commonly used by foot soldiers at the time. However, she probably never actually used these weapons to kill anyone. Instead, she used them for show, relying on her presence and charisma to inspire the French and frighten the English. She was too pure for such violence. Instead, she used her weapons for show. She would brandish her sword or raise her lance as she led her troops into battle. Her presence alone was enough to inspire the French and terrify the English. Plus, they were relatively easy to use, meaning that Joan wouldn't need much training to be effective. This was the standard weapon for mounted combat during the Middle Ages, and it would have been ideal for Joan's size and strength. A lance was a long wooden spear with a sharp metal point at one end. She is revered as a national heroine in France, and her story has inspired countless works of art, literature, and music. Whether you believe that Joan of Arc was a saintly figure or just a peasant girl who got caught up in a war, there's no denying that she was a fascinating historical figure. They were typically about 5 to 6 meters long and were used for jousting and charging enemy formations. With a little training, Joan could have easily learned how to use a lance effectively. When the English guards refused, she supposedly drew her sword and said, "If you do not open the gates, I shall break them down." Axes were another popular weapon among medieval foot soldiers, and they would have been much easier for Joan to wield than a sword. An axe was a versatile weapon that could be used for both offensive and defensive purposes. Its sharp blade could cut through flesh and bone, while its heavier head could knock away shields and other weapons. Joan's small stature would have made her more agile, and she could have used this to her advantage when fighting with an axe. With that, she allegedly struck her sword against the iron bars of the gate until sparks flew. Impressed by her courage and determination, the English guards opened the gate, and Joan of Arc and her army were able to enter the city. However, this story is most likely apocryphal, meaning it's a story that seems correct, but is not really true. We have no written accounts of the story, and it doesn't fit with what we know of Joan of Arc's character. She was a devout Christian, and it's unlikely that she would have behaved in such a manner. She is best known for leading the French army to victory in the 100 Years' War against the English. Joan of Arc led the French to some of their greatest victories, but how did she do it? Well, with weapons, of course. But which ones? So Joan's story began when she was 13 years old and claimed to have seen a vision of Saint Michael along with several other saints who told her to go to the city of Reims and anoint Charles VII as King of France. This meant that there was very little opportunity for them to learn how to fight. For a woman to be involved in battle was looked down upon by society. Back then, a lady wasn't supposed to lift a finger, unless it was to drop a spindle. Needless to say, there were very few female warriors around, although they did exist. Joan of Arc definitely wasn't one of them. Joan decided to follow these visions and set out on a pilgrimage to the city of Reims, where she eventually met with King Charles VII. So far, so good, but we still don't know what weapons Joan used. Despite the fact that Joan had no military experience whatsoever, King Charles VII gave her a hearing. It was at this point that Joan began to gather supporters. During the time period in which Joan lived, women were expected to stay at home and take care of the household. When Joan of Arc was handed a sword, she was probably given a basic steel blade, possibly even one of the king's spare swords. There is a famous story about Joan of Arc and a sword that she supposedly wielded during the siege of. Instead, Joan of Arc was probably given a lance. Another possibility is that Joan was given an axe. Lastly, it's possible that Joan was given a bow and arrow. However, there is one important detail to keep in mind. Joan of Arc was ultimately captured by the English and burnt at the stake, but her legacy lives on. In conclusion, we may never know exactly what weapons Joan of Arc used in battle. Now, we would love to hear from you. Do you think Joan of Arc was a saintly figure, or just a peasant girl who got caught up in a war. Thank you all so much for joining me today. If you're new here, welcome. I am thrilled to have you. Also, be sure to turn on spatial audio if your device allows for it. This will help you feel like you're truly right there in the middle of the action. And if you really want to get immersed, I encourage you to lie down and relax like you might before going to sleep, before history writes names in blood and forgets the rest. But for now, there is only stillness and sleep. What do you notice? How does it make you feel, but also help you better understand the power of storytelling and how it can evoke emotions, ignite imagination, and transport us to different worlds? So take a moment to let the words resonate within you. Let the story linger in your thoughts and allow yourself to be captivated by the enchanting realm of literature. As always, I look forward to hearing your thoughts and insights. Thank you for joining me on this journey through words and stories. Until next time, happy reading and reflecting. Here are some questions that might help guide your reflection, but feel free to explore on your own as well. What is the significance of the knight's age? How does it shape our understanding of the story? Why do you think the author chose to include this detail? How does the description of the knight's eyes contribute to the overall portrayal of his character? What does it reveal about him as a person? What kind of person would carry such weight in their eyes? How does the setting of the story impact the mood and atmosphere? How does the description of the knight in the camp create a sense of tension and anticipation? How does the author use sensory details to immerse you in the scene? Can you hear the crackling of the fire, smell the scent of the pine forest, or feel the dampness of the moss beneath your feet? What role does foreshadowing play in building suspense? Pay attention to any details that hint at what might happen next. How do these hints create a sense of uncertainty and anticipation? How does the knight's armor both protect him and limit his humanity? Consider the phrase names in blood and forgotten. What does this suggest about the fate of the characters? How does this knowledge influence your emotional response? What does the knight's prayer reveal about his values and beliefs? How does it shape our understanding of his motivations and fears? What do you think the knight is praying for? What kind of victory is he hoping for? How does the mention of the knight's shield evoke a sense of nostalgia and sentimentality? Shields are often seen as symbols of courage and defense. What does the shield symbolize for the knight? How does its condition reflect his own internal state? Explore the squire's role in the story. How does his presence and actions contribute to the overall narrative? How does the squire's behavior reflect the values and customs of medieval society? So let's jump right into it. Before we begin, just a quick note that this audio experience is designed to be listened to in headphones, so please plug them in if you can. The camp is quiet now. Few scribble letters to loved ones they may never see again. Inside, the knight reads a small book of psalms by candlelight. His lips move, but the words are inaudible. In the corner of the tent lies his shield, painted with a fading emblem, perhaps a lion, perhaps a tower scuffed and cracked from years of use. He has carried it across muddy fields and narrow passes. Tomorrow, it may break for good. The squire places a bowl of broth in front of him. The knight nods once, eats slowly. The broth is thin, but warm-flavored with onion, perhaps leek. It's enough. He does not speak much. Words are scarce before battle. When he finishes, he wipes his mouth with a square of cloth, then kneels on the thick fur laid across the floor. He bows his head and prays not for victory, but for the strength to stand, to not disgrace his family name, to live. His sword lies beside him, or, if not to live, then to die cleanly. Before sleep, he inspects his saddle, his lance, the padding beneath his mail. His fingers tremble, but only slightly. This is routine now. At last, he lies back on a woolen roll, arms crossed, staring up at the tent's dark peak. Rain begins to fall, soft pattering against canvas. He does not stir. The squire douses the candle. The flame gutters, darkness. Outside, the torches flicker low in their sconces. The restless shuffling of horses echoes through the dark. The laughter of soldiers has faded into murmurs. A distant owl calls once, then falls silent. You are inside a knight's tent, pitched in the middle of a medieval war camp on the eve of battle. The tent is spacious, not lavish, but carefully arranged. The fabric is thick, stitched with family colors, drawn tight to keep out wind. It smells of beeswax, oil, old leather, and damp earth. A single candle flickers on a small wooden desk. The flame dances in the polished metal of a breastplate hanging nearby. The knight is seated on a low stool. He is young, perhaps no older than 25, but his eyes carry years. He sharpens a dagger slowly, not because he needs to, but because the motion calms him. Beside him, laid out in meticulous order, gauntlets, greaves, gorget, surcoat. His squire moves quietly around the tent, checking the straps on his armor, folding clean linen, pouring water into a basin. There is no rousing speech tonight, no firelit camaraderie, just preparation and silence. Outside the tent, the camp is a maze of low fires and sleeping men. Some whisper prayers. Others play dice for what little they have left. And so ends the final hours of peace, before the sun rises and the swords are drawn, before hoofbeats crash through mist. Before the charge, as you settle in, think about the story you just heard. Taking the time to reflect on these questions will not only deepen your appreciation for the story,